Hi, I'm Darren Gorton, the CFO at South African Institute of Professional Accountants. We're a professional accountancy organisation, and we're here at the ITWeb SAP CFO roundtable. Today was a fascinating look at whether ERPs can still deliver value to organisations. Businesses have to be agile and flexible, and making sure that systems follow strategy is key. There's a clear drive towards better decision making, and getting the information to support those decisions is critical. A lot of time and money is being spent on integrating systems, especially with the ERP as the core system, and bringing information from the other systems together to provide a unified source of information. But that's a painful experience, and Excel still becomes the default option for many companies. What's interesting to see is that there's been quite a change in user expectations with the proliferation of web and mobile applications that everybody has access to now. We want the same things from our systems, and just as easy as well. What came out today is that ERP is still very important to most organizations, but they battle to get a single source of unified information, so integrating the systems becomes the real pain point for most. It was a great event to be at. I enjoyed hearing about other people's challenges and benchmarking ourselves against them to understand what those pain points are and whether we're actually on the right track in terms of trying to solve them.
My name is Boniface Ndawala. I'm the acting CEO and CFO for Bond Empire. Today we have been discussing about the state of ERP, whether or not in today's world ERP is a business enabler or a business hinderer. That was a good discussion, so I'd like to share some thoughts. ERP remains a business enabler as far as I'm concerned. You still rely on it to run a business properly, professionally, and to be able to serve your clients, and to make sure that you're able to report to your shareholders on time and all that kind of stuff. However, what has been discussed and what we have noted is that businesses have outgrown ERP. By that I mean, we have seen that other ancillary systems have to be used to support ERP in order to be able to serve the business as needs be. So you get business intelligence systems, you get other people preferring to use Excel because maybe they're not getting the result they were hoping for in ERP. So basically, what needs to happen going forward is that ERP needs to catch up with business. There's new business types that have developed over the past 10, 15 years that probably 20 years ago we never thought about. So these new business lines need to be covered. The availability of information at the moment has made it that business, it's very, very competitive because there's so much information. So ERP needs to adapt to be able to support a business on an ongoing basis. Be it the financials where it's not just month-end accounting, that's not good enough. You need to get into almost a daily kind of reporting. Going forward, I believe ERP will still remain central in terms of supporting the running of businesses. However, there is a need for ERP to catch up with the requirements of the business so that users do not go and look for other alternatives to supplement or indeed maybe bypass ERP and use other systems because they are more relevant. There's a need to invest into what's going on now and what's going to be the business lines in the future. If that doesn't happen, ERP might become irrelevant, and that would be such a shame. There is so much investment that has so far gone into ERP. I do a lot of business in Africa, and you can see that a lot of businesses in Africa are not being supported the way that they should be supported. What's going on is that people work towards what the system says they should do. So instead of a system supporting the business is working towards making sure that they're able to report in accordance with the system. And that's not the way it's supposed to happen. So there's a lot of work that needs to happen in that area. However, I am hopeful that going forward, ERP will remain a fundamental part of running our business, an enabler. And if there's good investment that goes into incorporating all these other systems that are coming up to be part of ERP, then it will remain the force that it has been. The future is bright for ERP for me, as far as I'm concerned. And there's a big market out there in Africa where people are just beginning to appreciate what ERP can do. So that's what I had to share. And again, it was a good workshop that we had today and one that I would like to attend in the future. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name's Simon Carpenter. I'm the Chief Technology Advisor for SAP in Africa. And it's been great to be at the CFO roundtable this afternoon listening to CFOs, both their aspirations and some of the challenges that they face. What was interesting for me was a lot of those challenges have been around a long time, so it says that we got to get better at trying to address them. So one of the challenges that stood out for me that CFOs face is that as the CFO in an organization, they have a very particular role to play in helping the organization to manage risk, all kinds of risk, but obviously particularly financial and monetary risk. And yet, at the same time, the organization is trying to move forward, which typically implies doing some level of innovation that by definition often has risk attached to it, because when you innovate, you're not entirely sure whether what you do is going to work or not. So that was one thing that stood out for me. The other thing that stood out for me was the difficulty that CFOs still have in getting a real grasp of what's happening in and around the organization. And typically that's because a lot of the information that they have to work with is not all in one system yet. So despite the fact that many companies have done ERP, they haven't necessarily integrated all of the requirements that they have into that ERP system. And I think there's an opportunity there for many companies to actually get that right. Particularly today, it's going to be important as we move into the digital era that you are able to strip out the kind of latencies that we see when companies work with unintegrated systems. And then of course maybe the most important thing for CFOs, given the role that they're increasingly playing in helping to act almost as a consultant to their board colleagues around what to do and how to do it and where the opportunities lie, is providing insight. And that insight comes from having at your fingertips the analytics you need to really understand what's going on. So there were a few trends that we didn't necessarily drill into in great detail, and obviously inside an organization one needs to do that. But the things that stood out were, firstly, we're moving into this world of cyber physical systems, which many people will label as IoT, Internet of Things, where we're wiring the world up and getting data in real time from pretty much everything that's around us. Now, what that means for CFOs is the opportunity to get a much faster perspective on what's happening in the business. But equally, it opens up the opportunity for things like new business models. So for example, now, instead of selling a piece of capital equipment to your customer, you may sell them an outcome. So your customer might be in mining and might say to you, I don't want to buy a bulldozer, I want holes in the ground, or I want stockpiles moved from the pit to the port. And so you move into this world where you start billing what you do as a service rather than selling it as a capital good. That changes a lot for CFOs because it means you have to really be on top of what's happening. You require new billing systems. You maybe have a higher volume of transactions going through your business. So that's the one thing. Linked to that is the customer expectation. Customers today expect a better experience from your organization, and that goes all the way through from the initial contact they may have with you in marketing and sales processes through to ongoing interactions they have with you through billing processes, dispute management processes and the like. So you again have to have the information in one place and available very, very quickly so that you can respond to those customers effectively. And of course, if you're the CFO, you've got to do all of these new things and keep the costs down, which requires higher levels of automation in the back office environment, what we would call lights out financial operations. So one of the questions that comes up when we talk to CFOs about all these new requirements that are coming so fast and so hard at all kinds of businesses is ERP still relevant? After all, it's been around since the 1990s. And we would argue absolutely it is. You still have to govern your organization. You still have to produce a P&L and a cash flow statement and balance sheets and all of that. And that's the province of ERP systems. But what's undeniable is it's not ERP as we know it back from the 90s and through the early 2000s. We've had to entirely recast what an ERP system is all about. And today what it's all about, firstly, is it has to be dramatically simplified. ERP systems got very bloated over the last decade or so. We now have the opportunity, because of in-memory computing, to dramatically simplify an ERP system, which makes it inherently less complex to use and also easier to report out of. And then hand in glove with that, we bring the reporting together with the transaction environment. So we have this ability now to understand instantly what's going on in the business as business transactions are flowing through. And when we talk about business transactions flowing through, there's going to be many more of those than there might be today as we move into this Internet of Things environment, where we're micro-billing customers for the things that we do for them. So we have to be able to process data much more quickly than was the case in the past. And again, that brings SAP back to the in-memory compute platform on which our new ERP system is built. It gives us some wonderful capabilities to process data really quickly and to bring analytics and transactions together. And then the next step beyond that for the CFO that's looking to drive cost out of the business is to use technologies like machine learning to hyper-automate processes that today may still be quite manual. And what we mean by that is that you've got lots of data sitting in your ERP system that tells us how you've run your business historically, how you've resolved business challenges like matching payments to invoices. We can teach machine learning algorithms from that data and then let it do that work for you absolutely automatically. And to give you an example of how dramatic the improvement can be, we have one customer where using classic ERP, they automatically settled around about 45% of the invoice to payment process. They brought in robotic process automation and that took that up into the 80s. Now, with machine learning, they're settling 94% of the invoice to payment matching without a human hand needing to touch anything. So those people that sat in the debtors department doing this really boring grudge work, almost repetitive work, they can now have their talent unlocked to do something more useful for the organization, driving costs out at the same time, as just one example of what it means to run a digital core as the next generation of ERP today. So listening to the CFOs talking this afternoon, I actually got quite excited about what we're doing. And to me, it was a validation that we're on the right track. We've simplified our ERP system. We've moved it onto an in-memory compute platform, so it's blitzingly fast. We've paid a lot of attention to the user experience. We've made it very, very intuitive, and we've brought the analytics and the transactions together. So it's much, much easier for people to do their jobs, make their decisions, and drive the business forward. And of course, let's not forget either that we've moved this to the cloud. So for those organizations that want to get rid of the data center kind of approach and have someone else run their ERP system for them with security, with services wrapped around it, we can do that as well. So there's many ways we can assist the modern CFO to really step up to the new requirements that their boards have of them, to provide insight, to provide counseling to the board on what good strategic decisions they should be making, and so forth. The reality is, if you're a CFO, as we heard this afternoon, you're thinking about how do I drive cost out of my organization? How do I improve the cycle times, make things faster so I can be more responsive to the marketplace and to my customers? How do I get the insights I need so that I can offer my board colleagues the kind of advice they need to drive the organization forward? And how do I make sure this organization stays well governed? These are all things that ERP systems can do for you. So if you're interested in exploring what those kind of benefits are, and in particular how a digital ERP system can take you to the next level and prepare you for this rapidly approaching digital era that we're in, then I'd love to chat to you. Give me a call, 011-235-6082. Look forward to chatting to you.